From Studio C in the 511 studios located in the Brewery District in downtown Columbus, Ohio, this is Note to Future Me. Hi, I'm Brett Johnson, owner of Circle 270 Media Podcast Consultants. In this episode, I talk with Aaron and Alex Greene. Aaron is the founder and CEO of College Liftoff. Alex, his wife, is the marketing director at College Liftoff. They have a podcast called Affording College with Aaron Greene. The podcast is utilizing their expertise in college planning. And what is interesting about the podcast and their industry, which is very, very young, is explaining to their listeners that they have a problem that they need to address when they start preparing their students to go to college, all in the financial realm. Basically, right now we're looking at a $1.3 trillion debt in college loans. And with their podcast, they're looking to address this situation, help families get away from walking out of the 4-year, the 6-year, the 8-year college ride with as little of debt as possible, utilizing available scholarships, picking the best college that they should be picking for their student, all mixed in with trying to figure out how much information should they give away during each podcast. It's a tricky slope, but I think a lot of businesses do encounter that when they start to create a podcast that shows off their expertise in their field. How much information do you give away? And I think they do a great job of explaining their process and their mindset of what they do with the podcast. Hope you enjoy, and thanks for taking notes with me. Well, as I do with all my episodes, I want to dig a little bit deeper in regards to nonprofits that, whether you two outside of College Liftoff take care of, or that the College Liftoff you want to really focus on, that the students help out, or maybe, as a business that you feel it's pretty wise to get into. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, so interestingly, this is kind of rooted in nonprofit work. And so if taken a very deep step back, when this conceptually even came to me, College Liftoff, it was something I thought I'd do as a nonprofit. Oh,
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So this is 10 plus years ago, and it was just like I kind of saw some things that obviously that we work on today that are paramount, such as like poor college planning in the sense of poor financial planning, students not knowing what they want to do, but really not having good connection between industry and academia and all those. But I thought, be something I do on the side as a nonprofit just to kind of help out. And as it started to become more apparent that this is a bigger problem than I thought, that's when it was like, man, this is actually there's a structure, a bigger business structure that should go around it. So, interestingly, the first website I ever bought, the first domain was collegeliftoff.org.
And that's why, because I remember having an email address with .org, and finally I stopped using that. It's like, now that makes sense why the .org was available. Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of its root. Now, that being said, it started to turn into a full-time job for me, and then it really became a much bigger thing that even though we're for profit, it doesn't matter per se. It doesn't change our perspective on what we're doing. I think it just shows that there's a solution to this, a business solution to this that makes vital sense, that still saves people tons of money, tens of thousands of dollars through this, and really helps them figure out and get their best, brightest future for their kids. That's our main goal in the end, no matter what status we have. Now, the thing is, too, because we're sitting here, obviously, with Paige and Alex, and the truth is their backgrounds were from that. In fact, Alex, we got married at the church that we met, and she was the development director for that church.
Yeah.
So they came from that, and she worked with Paige at ETSS, which was a nonprofit, and others in order to raise awareness.
Well, we didn't work it with. Well, we volunteered. And other organizations as well.
Yeah. So as College Liftoff, as an organization, you do some nonprofit work, correct?
Yeah.
Giving back to the community. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I would say that. We are not a nonprofit, but, with our mission being, to help secure, the brightest futures for teens and saving money, that doesn't exist for, some teens and not other teens. We really are in it to help all students, all teens find their best future and not go into crazy amounts of debt. So, we do work with nonprofits like the Ethiopian Tewahedo Social Services, and we work with their youth program. So these are teens who have recently immigrated to America and don't necessarily, like, their parents haven't gone through the college process in America. So, they don't even know if college is an option for them. Their parents don't know if college is an option for them. Affordability is a huge issue. So we do workshops with their youth programs to, help them with college readiness, show them what is available for them and help them, get to that step. And we've ended up, working with several students, even pro bono, through our process, to help them achieve their college and career goals. We also work with some schools as well.
Work with Metro High School.
Mm-hmm,
Okay.
Yeah. Now we're starting a relationship with ACPA, and with our nonprofit arm with Gives. We can really expand that work. So I know that Laura has a lot of outreach in various sectors in the community because there are just so many people who recognize the need for quality college planning and support for all of the students. So.
Laura is our director of College Liftoff Gives.
Gotcha. Okay, good. Well, as most businesses start, there's usually a pain point that you recognize that you could fulfill and make some money. Although, again, you initially said that it was more of a nonprofit feel to it, just I want to do this, and it turned into something you can make money with. Let's talk about that process, how it began, how that pain point you saw and addressed, created the business. Let's talk about that development of how College Liftoff started and how it is today then.
So we have a unique problem with our pain point. Our pain point, one, it's pretty universal. It's this whole college preparation problem, whether it be academic, whether it be financial, or whether it be figuring out what you want to do, all of these things. The pain point is very real. The problem is most of the people we deal with in a day, if not everybody at this point, still don't recognize that it's a problem yet. Even though it's kind of all out there, right? You can see student loan debt totals in the trillions.
It's in the news all the time.
All these things.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not conceivably being recognized by the individuals, families, that this is a thing that they've got to do and how they have to do it. I always liken this to like a washing machine. If your washing machine goes out, you go get a new washing machine, right? So it's a very one-to-one process. So if you start a business that sells washing machines, it's very simple. You solve that problem. But our audience, our clientele really don't know that. So we have to bring them to the full grasp of understanding this is a thing and this is how it correlates and relates to you.
Right.
And now we've got to be able to solve this problem for you. So we have to sell it as an industry every time we walk into a room and then actually bring it down to the individual as person.
Because it does relate to them. It relates to you. We could go real mega, nebulous with this, but whether, you are the parent of a high school student, then obviously it relates to you. Even if you're not the parent of a high school student, it still relates to you on an economic level. Student loan debt will affect you when it comes... I don't want to get too big, but it will affect you when it comes to, just our market, the housing market, the economy, future workers.
Yeah. That really goes to like how talking about how I started this, and I'll give you the story. I'll try to condense it as best I can. But when I was 17, I sat in this situation that every 17-year-old is, which is I've got to go to college. And I was living with my mom, and she was sending me to a private school in Cincy. And I said, hey, thank you. It's been a blessing. I'm going to figure out how to pay for college on my own. And at the time, I got into my dream school, which was Northwestern, but the price tag was $45,000 a year, and they gave me $15,000 in scholarships to go. And our EFC, expected family contribution, how much the Fed expects you to pay towards college, was $5,000. So if I ran my numbers, 45 minus 15 minus 5 left me with $25,000 a year. I would have had to take out in debt to go to school there, private and public. Multiply that by 4 years, that's $100,000 in debt. I was 17 at this point. I didn't know if this was just what everybody was doing or not.
Right.
I'm naturally scared to death of debt. And so, and I had asked myself, because I wanted to go to school for engineering, is an engineering degree at that time, which is going to be worth roughly $50,000 to $60,000 a year, worth $100,000 student loan debt? I visited Ohio State. I felt comfortable there. I could go. It was my third choice, to be honest with you. The average debt then was $20,000. So the question I had to ask myself, is Northwestern worth the premium for me, in my case? Because the truth is, it's different for everybody. And yeah, it's a top 12 school in the country, all those things. But the reality is, in engineering, all Big Ten schools are good at it. In fact, in my program in mechanical at the time, Northwestern was ranked 22nd in the country, and Ohio State was ranked 24th. So what am I losing my reputation by going to Ohio State? Nothing. So why in the world would I take on $80,000 more in debt and cost? Better value for my education, OSU. But I still had to make the money work out of this. And I was fortunate. I got a full tuition scholarship at Ohio State, but room and board is more expensive than the tuition is in state. Plus you have to pay for books. And I filled out something like 30 outside scholarships my senior year of high school. I was fortunate and got 4 of them. Really, the going rate for outside scholarship is about 10%. They're kind of like grant writing for a church or a nonprofit. Right. It's really not as this pocket of money that people think it is. It's just not. But it totaled roughly $20,000. So I'm thinking, great, my average debt's covered. I shouldn't have to take on any debt to go to school. But you have to make the money work year to year and quarter to quarter. And my first year, I took on a part-time job. I worked for the Department of Education in the computer labs. I made $7 an hour. I did my homework 9 to 10 hours. I sat in the lab, but I paid for my books. Mm-hmm. And I took on a little debt and scholarship money, and Mom helped me with room and board that year. But year 2 through year 4, I was an RA, which pays your entire room and board at 80% of schools in this country. And so that left my total cost at 0 because my scholarship was taking care of tuition. Well, this is where it gets really fun, and I'll be very honest up front about the numbers with this. I had roughly $1,500 a quarter, because OSU was on quarters at the time, being sent to the university on my behalf in the form of that outside scholarship money, $20,000 split over those 4 years. Well, schools treat your accounts like bank accounts. There's credits, there's debits. They don't care where money comes from so long as their accounts are paid off. Well, I had the money sent for books and supplies, which is, according to the IRS, an untaxable form of income for those. So I just walk into the bursar's office every quarter for 3 years, and they would cut me a check for $1,500 tax-free, and I put it right in my bank account.
All right.
And I worked engineering internships every summer. I worked at GE Aviation and GE Aircraft Engines in Cincy. And engineering internships were paid well then, they're paid well now. I was pocketing about $6,000 to $8,000 a summer doing it. I was living at home with my mom, and she told me to put money away in case the day the ceiling fell in. I said, sure, I need to do anything with it. But it never did. And I walked out of school with a little bit of debt. Actually, it was about $2,000 worth of total debt, my mechanical engineering degree, and a surplus of $40,000, which changes a lot of things.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But it also meant that I didn't have to take the first job that was offered me. I actually got to find the job that I really wanted to work, and I worked for a startup airline, which was my dream job because I got to work on a full aircraft. And I bought a couple of properties on campus because the next step from being an RA is being a landlord to college students. So it was an easy graduation. But that's where a couple of things started to take note, where I was working for the airline had gone away, and I'd worked for Honda, or subsidy for Honda, for a while. And I was working with master's degree engineers. And I'll never forget this, where I had a dad that, I'm 25, 26, and they were asking me college questions. And he came up to me and asked me this situation, to evaluate the situation, where he had a kid that was getting a $60,000 scholarship to this school, and they were replacing him with a $40,000 tuition bill. So on paper, that's really a $400,000 cash flow swing. So I'm asking him, what's bringing to this? And the overwhelming answer was, well, my kids didn't like it there. For $400,000, we got to make better decisions than this. Mm-hmm. So that's where this really started to come to be. Okay. But he had another scenario happening on the other side, where I had friends living in my properties for years. And we're now in our mid-30s. And honestly, most of them are just now buying their first homes, having their first kids, getting married. You know, my wife and I are fortunate. We have 4 kids. We own multiple properties. We own our own companies. It makes a difference.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It makes a big one.
You know, your friends were renting from you because they had so much student loan debt that they couldn't buy their first houses.
$600 to $900 a month in student loan payments in most cases. Yeah. You're not going anywhere with that. It's just not going to happen.
You know, I came on board with College Liftoff. I also have a background. I have a real estate license. So I was working as a realtor, and just time and time again, I was helping clients that were, mid-30s, had kids, like trying really hard to buy their first house, with a government-backed loan, like trying to scrape together all their savings and get approved for a loan. And it was because they still had so much student loan debt that they were not able to get a better loan, better rate, have more savings. And I just thought, like, this, parents are sending their kids to college because they want their kids to be successful, happy, get a good job, be able to raise their own families, and do well. And that's just not happening this day and age. So I came home from work one day and I was like, I gotta join you. We have to make this a thing. We have to make this a thing that people understand. You don't have to do college in the way that it's being done. There is a better way, because it's not working for people. And so, the headlines that you see, $1.5 trillion student loan debt, people out there, they see the headline and they think it's just that, and then they think it's just this big nebulous thing that doesn't apply to them, but it really does. Because if you're sending your kid to school and he or she's taking on all this debt, it's going to affect them into their 30s, 40s, 50s. Mm-hmm. Paige here was just saying that she just paid off her student loans this past weekend, right?
We pushed the button together on the phone to send that final payment. It was awesome,
right?
And sad,
but because it doesn't go away. You can't make it go away. So, but even if it's not your kids going to school, like I said, I have a background in real estate, so I would help, people that were trying to downsize. Their kids were already gone and now they're trying to downsize, and they're, complaining about why won't the millennials, buy our house for their families. Everybody's putting off marriage and putting off house, and it's nobody can afford to, because the younger generation isn't thinking now about, having kids at a younger age because they can't afford to. They can't afford to buy a house with 4 bedrooms. They're still renting from their friends like Aaron.
Sure, this isn't a choice. This is a reality financially. Like it's just set up for that.
Right. So you see the problem that exists.
Yes.
In
student loan debt affects us all.
Yeah. So you have all these marketing opportunities and different ways to try to educate and let everyone know, you see these big numbers and this is how it affects you. You go the route of podcasting. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that decision. How did it come about that you wanted to do a podcast?
Well, really, we just felt like it was a really great way to get that message out, to help people. We can't be everywhere at every time talking about, with a megaphone, this is a problem, this is a problem. We try to do as many presentations at libraries and at schools, as we can, and we have a good Facebook presence. But having this forum, being able to do a podcast, we can just state problems, answer questions directly for parents wherever you are, whether you're in Columbus or Ohio or across the country, anywhere really. So we just really wanted this podcast to be a megaphone for us to answer parents' questions. There's so many out there. College has become so crazy. And we just really want to be able to help people.
All right.
Awareness is such a part of where we are at this point, because we deal with a very big problem. A very, very big societal problem that is really just not really all that recognized. We talk about it loosely here and there. We see the things that kind of happen. But $1.5 trillion in debt as a country in this thing is second to mortgage debt. There's nothing else close to either of those two things.
Right.
And college costs aren't going anywhere. People think that they're going to get cheaper. They're not. That's not. Things don't go backwards in costs. They stagnate, but they don't go backwards. So middle America trying to buy college in this day and age is probably the hardest thing that they're doing, and they don't realize it. So we have to, as Alex said, create a megaphone or whatever we can to just talk and say, look, don't just do this thing that's just you see everybody else doing in big air quotes. You've got to think through this more logically, or else your retirement's gone or your kids aren't buying a home for the next 20 years. Mm-hmm. Those are the things you're sacrificing at this point if you don't do this right.
Right. So I liken, to creating any kind of content, whether it's a content or call it assets, it's got to have some kind of ROI, return on investment, or even return on influence. So have a borderline, I think, with what you're doing. And again, full disclosure, I work with you, you work with us in regards to putting the podcast together. And I ask these questions kind of in the vein of, I don't know what you're doing, but I do. But
Right.
at the same time.
And we work with your kids.
Right, exactly.
So,
So it's kind of full circle. So you have a vested interest in making sure that this does work. But at the same time, I'm cognizant of what you do with the episodes of you're very well versed in regards to what you do. How do you know where that tipping point is of too much information in a podcast that you're not giving away the secret sauce? And I think I know what you do with it. But I want to kind of get your perspective on how far you go while you're recording, because again, it's unscripted. You know where you're going with these episodes, but I think this is a problem with some businesses that do the consultative work. You're consultants with these parents and these families of helping them get through where they need to do, and you have a lot of proprietary ideas in your heads how you do this sort of thing. But at the same time, you're giving away a lot of information. How do you address this? How do you go with each episode and know that, okay, we got to stop here?
Well, on one hand, we want to give away a lot of information because the intent of this podcast is really to help people and to start the conversation, answer questions. When parents or students or, prospective parents, anybody that's listening, is thinking, oh my gosh, one day I'm going to have a kid and they're going to go to college, or I have a kid and, are they going to go to college? We just really want to, we really feel for parents out there that don't have anybody advocating for them. So we want to give away information that will help them be able to make better decisions, that will understand the process. So on that hand, we're not terrified of giving away too much information, but I think where it stops is that, there's only so much that we can say without then actually having to work with you. So, we do a lot of work. We have, a whole entire writing center at College Liftoff, and it's spectacular. We have, writing camps. We have one-on-one essay writing advisors. So we could talk about it and talk about, some components of a great essay, but that's not going to help. That will help somebody only enough. It's not. It doesn't take the place of actually sitting down with an advisor, working on your college essay, going through the peer editing process. And Paige is in charge of our writing center, so she can talk more about that.
It's my favorite part of what I do. So, no, it's true. We have a great workshop that we provide for all of our juniors, and we sit down and we talk about, these are some things you need to include in your essay. These are some things you should exclude. And we could share all of that here, and I would feel totally fine with not giving away our secret sauce, because inevitably at some point you as the student are going to need to sit down, figure out which prompt you want to answer, develop your thesis, do your pre-writing, which we emphasize all the time to our students. And then write. And inevitably, every kid who comes through goes, wow, 650 words, that's a lot. And then the first draft they hand over is like 900 words, because 650 words is no words at all. When you try to convey who you are as a person to a group of people deciding whether or not to let you into college. But I'm going to make sure that the 650 words that you have on your paper are the right ones that really tell your best story and are the most precise verbs and really give a sense of who you are as a human, without relying on generalities. I want specific details, and I want to make sure that we're sticking to, a relevant time period in your life, the last couple of years, not what happened when you were 6, those sorts of things. But again, we could talk about all of that here, and we have, but I can't do the editing of your first draft unless we sit down together.
Yeah. See, we don't fear information. Information is an awareness, and that's the thing we actually need to get more out of, is awareness of the topic. As we're all saying here, it's the work that's actually needed to be done in order to make that information actually usable, right? So I talk about this a lot in our podcast, just of what college planning is today and what it should look like and what it should feel like. And I try to use the basis of comparison of other things we do in life in order to signify that. So I talk a lot about it being very similar to buying a house, where you say, okay, there's 4,200 universities, each one with 200 majors. It's a plethora, almost a Google-esque problem of choice. So when you look at it in comparison to how many houses are are on the market at any given time in an area, you don't go visit 3,000 houses. You visit like maybe 10, and then you may bid on or you may actually try to you may actually try to get 1, 2, or 3. You may put bids in for them. Same thing here, but you use a realtor to do it. There's work and steps that go into that as a process. Use a realtor, use a banker to get your mortgage. There are all the things there. You can know what the process looks like. That doesn't mean doing a FSBO is the smartest thing to do or the easiest. It's traditionally the hardest. So how do you actually do this most effective, most cost-effective way, and the most time-effective way? That's where good college planning should take the place of that.
All right. I think you do a good job of that within the episodes, that you give enough information, you set yourself up as the experts, and realize that, and then again, it's the listener's choice, whether they're going to contact you or not. You can do this on your own, but I think you set the episodes up so well with each topic that I could do this alone. Thank you for the information, but boy, I can't do this alone.
Yeah.
And I think once you realize the timetable that you're a part of, I think this is with any, again, a podcaster that has information to give out. And I guess my point being, don't be afraid to give out the information.
Absolutely.
Because you're setting yourself up as the expert anyway. It's a branding tool for you to know that, College Liftoff or XYZ company, they know what they're talking about. When I'm ready, I can listen to a few episodes, and if I'm going to pull the trigger, I can trust them because I've heard them through 5, 10, 20 episodes.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, as a realtor, it honestly, I personally think, and I hope I don't get in trouble for this, I personally think it is easier to do a FSBO on your house than it is to go through the college planning process by yourself. Honestly, from sitting in both seats,
Sure.
It's really hard to do college right because there is nobody. There are very few people out there advocating for the families. So that's what we do.
Yeah. I think you got you get a unique and a different situation because, again, you're branding your company, getting information out about college planning, College Liftoff, as well as educating how difficult it has become because you're dealing with almost parents that are a generation removed from going through this process. It has changed from night and day. Yeah. And I think you're utilizing the tools that are available to you. Well, and an example being when we first started the series, it was just you, Aaron, doing these. Let's talk about the evolution of where this podcast has started and where it is today. And some ideas of maybe where you want it to go as well, too.
Well, it's grown along with our company as we've grown, which has been really awesome to just be a part of and see. I mean, I started this thing. We're getting ready to go into our 10-year anniversary this September, and there's going to be a lot of great new things that we're going to be doing in that, a lot of very big things that are going to change even our position in the market and how we're going to be approaching this. But the one great thing in the last, especially 3 years, I would say, let me back this up. I spent 4 years of this just working out of my house and going to Starbucks and Panera's and meeting people. I started this thing with maybe $1,000, maybe, and let's just see if it's a thing. And it took 3-4 years of honest goodness, just diligence and patience and just seeing if this is something that people need. Because you don't see a service like this every day. College planning isn't something we just see every day. I think in 10 more years, this is going to be commonplace for the reasons we're just stating, like the way we're talking about is a realty perspective. You're buying an asset that costs equivalent of your house and you're just winging it. Like, come on, that's ridiculous. We're going to get away from that. But in the past 3 years, we've really seen a lot of good growth with just people responding more to this as, oh my gosh, I do need help, which has led more to the fact that I can expand our client planning team, which Paige is our manager of client planning, and she manages our team of advisors. For a long time, it was just me. When I first started this podcast, it was me meeting with people, doing this on a day-to-day. Now we have a team of people that do it, and they're actually better at it than I am. They have more energy, more spirit for it.
Therefore, you hired the right people.
Yeah, we've done a great job.
They're younger at it. That's really.
Let's be honest.
It's not the Red Bulls; it's the age. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Honestly, that's one of the things that I love about College Liftoff. right? We have people who just graduated from college talking to students about how it is that you go to college. I don't know. I want to listen to somebody who is my peer more than somebody I relate to more than like me. Like I get the difference when I come into the room. It's like the parents get it with me and they're like, yeah, here's another old person like I am telling me about this, but the kids don't. And really it's our students who are driving the decision making, right? They're the ones who are figuring out where they're going to go and what they're going to study. I love that they're sitting down with somebody like Yoshi, who is young and fun and like really diligent in his research. And he was willing to spend that 40 hours with you, really helping you craft a good, strong plan.
Yeah.
So
70% of this process is done with the kid. Now the parents, and I say this all the time, this is a student-led choice, but a family decision. So the parents are in that room just the same, but this is all led by the kid, and we've got to have somebody to connect with them. And the truth is, and I get this question a lot, because we do hire our advisors almost out of college. Some of them have other things, but they're about 23 to 26 in that age range. And so the question becomes, well, they have enough experience doing this? I'm like, mercy, they're at the heart of the experience. They've got the most experience out of any of us. They've just walked out of this, seeing this firsthand in an age where it's the most expensive time, in an age where it's the most convoluted time to figure out how to pick a major. All these things, they've done that. They've literally lived it in the past couple of years. They're more relatable than any of us at this point.
Right.
So we've got to be able to do that. We've got to find almost a mentor-like relationship for the kids that we work with their advisors, so that way they can confide in them, they feel comfortable with them, they can break things apart that were once emotionally bounded, and we can now put them in logic and reason categories and help them decipher these big things. Again, retirement. You're not just going in front of a computer doing it. You can, but it's probably not the best method.
Right.
You know, all these things. You're not going to cackle with just going to fix your brakes in your parking lot for a good reason that it might wreck your car. You know, like you use people that have experience in these areas to do it. And we've really found that the group of advisors that we have are that. Right. Which is really great.
Yeah. Well, as you know, your business has evolved and gotten bigger. I think, you know, even what you've done with the podcast has evolved as well too. And from the very beginning, it was us coming into your office and plopping down a couple of microphones, and it worked. I'm not downplaying that at all, but it worked with your time, but it was also sporadic. And my point being, do what you have to do to get it done, because it's led to what we've got today. Now in a studio, 511 studios. That, you know, guests, people part of the business are now, you know, a guest. You've had guests from outside of the business as well, too. I mean, kind of talk about that evolution of once we kind of walked into the 511 studios and there's a different mindset, you were away from the office to get this done. What were your thoughts in regards to what you want to try to get accomplished?
Well, real quick, before we go into that, I want to intro that with understanding, like, this has all been led by the fact that Alex came into this company.
And yes, that was in the back of my mind too. Yes, correct.
Thank you, guys.
For up until about 3 years ago, we had no marketing presence, and then it was just us doing a thing in an office building out on Bethel, right? So, and with her coming into this finally and taking her background in communication and marketing and tools, and actually from development as well, and seeing all of those culminate into what we have today as far as a marketing presence, and it's growing. Right. All credence and credit goes there in this.
Thank you. That is very sweet, because most days I feel like I am just flying by the seat of my pants, as we all are, but like I really am. So, you know, I think that, you know, as we were doing the podcast before, it was just, like you said, it was very sporadic. You know, I thought that I was like, we got to do this podcast just to get, you know, like I said, a megaphone. I really wanted this to be a megaphone to like get the word out that this is a problem. We want to help you. We just want to help everybody. That is our mission. So as I started listening to podcasts myself, you know, I was kind of late to the game, but I got really into podcasts. I was like, this is perfect. We could totally do this. But it was sporadic, and it was just kind of Aaron talking about what was on his mind, which was great. But there's just so much more we could do. So I think being in the studio, and as you approached me, Brett, and said, like, this is an opportunity, you guys can come into the studio. We should probably set a schedule. I really latched onto that. And I say all this, like, if I'm giving advice to another business, like, do as I say, not as I do, because we are not as good as we should be about, like the days that we're recording. We're kind of like, oh, what does everybody have available this month? Let's do that. I think, to be a successful podcast, anybody really has to have a schedule as much as they can, commit to doing it, however much you decide that you're going to do it a month. Because this was a problem for us before, we would do, several in a row, and then it would be months before we released another podcast. But your listeners and subscribers really depend and get excited when it's like, yeah, another episode dropped. So, I want to make sure that we are doing, good by our listeners and releasing regularly and covering topics that they are interested in. So, our audience, our target audience really is like the parent of kids, high schoolers mostly, but you're really anybody who's kid will be a high schooler soon enough. And, they've got questions about the college planning process. So we try to do topics that answer the questions that they might have. We always ask for listeners to submit questions, and we do get questions through email, whether they're podcast listeners or parents that just have questions in general anyway about the college planning process. So we try to address those. In terms of a schedule, Brett, you and I sat down in the beginning of the year and said, okay, let's look at some timely college-related topics that we could cover throughout the year, and wrote those out. So we try to, stick to, what's timely for April, what's timely, we just recorded a podcast on the Common App because it's coming out now. But at the same time, life happens and other things in the news happen, and sometimes we just stray from that schedule and say, okay, well, what's going on now that we want to talk about? And so I guess, my goals for the future are to be more on schedule, sticking to a schedule when it comes to podcasting, because I think it is so important to our marketing efforts. And it's helped us out a lot. Getting the word out, it's helped with our credibility. Having a podcast. So, if somebody's like, who are these college planning people? Well, we have a podcast, you can listen to it, and that does add some credibility. But mostly, we just really want to help people. And so if you find that you've been helped by our podcast, feel free to give us a call.
All right. How have you folded the podcast into your other marketing pieces?
Oh, well, we have it on our website. We have a good social media presence on Instagram and Facebook, Twitter. So we push it out on all those, on LinkedIn. We push it out on all the social media forums, ask people to share.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what are some of the biggest changes? You touched upon some challenges, scheduling and such.
Yeah, so I want to be real upfront about that.
No.
We're not perfect.
But that is a stumbling block for a lot of people creating any type of content, any kind of assets.
Yes.
Blogging is the same way.
Right.
Whatever it might be, it's got to be put on the schedule to get it done.
Right.
It just does, because, as you said, life happens, and it does make it easier for other people who are involved, knowing that, okay, we're going to be doing these on Mondays. Yeah. Every month. Mark it out. If it doesn't work, that's okay, but at least it's there.
Right.
To at least we're there to do that. There's other stumbling blocks that you are encountering that you've overcome, or I know one can be topics a little bit.
Yeah, again,
timeliness as well as what to talk about next, but also, and I know this, we just did the Common App episode. It will have a shelf life.
Right. So, with college planning, I mean, to our advantage, it's a thing that happens every year. So you use the term evergreen a lot. A lot of our content is evergreen. Next year, we could talk about the Common App again. There's
always something changing.
There's always something changing, which
Right.
is the problem. A lot of our content, I feel like, is relevant over and over and over again. But in the way that, the Common App had changes, so we had to do an updated Common App podcast, because I believe we did one a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. And, student loan debt has actually gone up. It seems to do that every year. So, sometimes our stats are out of date, keeping fresh content is kind of a challenge, but I think the biggest challenge for us is that there are so many topics we could talk about, and they all relate to one another. So whenever we get into the studio, we can start on one topic and then kind of go down a rabbit hole that leads into another problem. I mean, we could just talk for days on end about the problems with college planning, and we're very good at that. So it's hard to stay on topic in a way that I feel like the listeners can digest, and I'm very cognizant of that, and I would say that's a big challenge for us, because we know everything in our heads, and we are in the thick of it, so we know about what it takes to plan for college, but it's hard sometimes to put our mindset in the mind of the listener that they're just hearing all of this for the first time, and we don't want anybody listening and going, what,
right?
So staying on one topic is sometimes a challenge, and it's just the amount of content. And I think any small business will find that they have more to talk about than they think. I think when we first started the podcast, I was very concerned about oh gosh, what are we going to talk about? We're doing this twice a month, for a year. What are we going to talk about? And we have way more topics to talk about than.
It's funny when we put that sheet together,
right.
We ended up turning the paper over,
yeah,
writing more things because you almost have the subsets of this
right.
whole idea, and it veered off here and veered off here. And it's
right.
like, wow, you're covered, honestly,
right.
yeah.
And I'll be
knowing
honest,
how well Aaron is versed
right.
in this. At that point, was just Aaron, and I didn't envision 2 or 3 other employees,
right.
advisors coming in and wanting to jump on and loving talking.
Mm-hmm.
So that helped too.
And I'll be honest, I have not stuck to that schedule a lot, because then, something comes up and it's like, oh, this is a relevant news topic that relates to college planning. We're going to do this instead of whatever we had planned for August, and so that's what I mean when I said earlier about sometimes we're just flying by the seat of our pants. It's because there's so much to talk about. So, being more focused and trying to, make it in digestible chunks has been
a
challenge.
Meet your audience where they are.
Right.
And again, since we don't talk about we're not doing sports talk here. I mean, this isn't just,
right.
Everybody's kind of dialed in. If there's a thing that happens in our reference frame, we got to address it.
Right. For example, the college planning scandal.
Yeah.
I had topics planned for, I think that was March, all set for March, and then that blew, and it's like, oh, we got to do a podcast on that, Yeah. So,
right.
But the flip side of that is so when we were talking about Common App earlier, they're rebranding. It's very exciting. And I was like, oh, and now it's enabled, you can do it on your phone. And I thought, that's such a big deal. It's so exciting. No one will care. Not because it's not exciting, but because the parents who are sitting down to fill out Common App this year are not the parents who filled out Common App last year when they couldn't use the phone. So it's big to us because we're in the market and we know how great it's going to be for families to be able to do this on their smartphone. But it's not something that we need to necessarily bring up during our podcast because most families won't know that it wasn't a thing last year.
So that's an important thing to know about our audience also, which is that I heard this a while back, but most people give birth 2 or 3 times in a lifetime, right? So you only need to know how to do it 2 or 3 times in a lifetime, right?
Sure.
You were only going to send a kid to college once. And if you got 2 of them, you're only going to do it twice. Mm-hmm. So our content has, to that point, is meeting that person exactly where they are. So the truth is, we're not going to get some continuous stream of listeners that, again, sports radio are constantly hearing about how this team is doing. It's relevant to you for this period of time in your life, and maybe again at another, and you're out of that game. So that's where it's even more reason that you need college planning, because you're not going to do it all that often. It's not going to be something that you do continuously a year where you need to pick up that skill set and now have it a part of your family dynamic.
Right.
It's not needed.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to end it with this question, and we have 3 different people in the room on this one because you give 3 different perspectives on advice. Where Aaron, business owner, developed the podcast, developed College Liftoff, your perspective on advice to a business looking at this from the marketing perspective, Alex, and from Paige's aspect of an employee there as a guest of the podcast, brand new to this year, some advice. Aaron, let's go with you. Advice you would give any business looking at this from your perspective to podcast.
To podcasting and why it would be beneficial for them?
Yeah.
It gives you, the nice thing about podcasting, and this is the thing that I really do like, unlike live radio, you get one shot at it. You get one shot at it on live radio, and or TV, because we've actually done a lot of TV. I've been on, morning shows probably 3 or 4 different times, maybe even 5, and nobody remembers those. Truth is, you see it, forget it, you move on. It's not something that actually grasps you. We used to do a lot of advertising on radio, and the truth is this: if you advertise on radio, you got to do it for the better part of a year before you have it sink in. Now, the thing, if it does, it'll sink in long term for a lot of people, and they'll think they hear it for years to come. But it takes so much time to do that. With podcasts, you can get in and know my personality after one episode. And you really can know what we're about after one. And if it's a thing that like, man, this is a thing, okay, great. So as a great example, like I listened to a Star Talk with Neil deGrasse Tyson's one. And you listen to one of those episodes, I don't know, Neil's personality. I mean, he's a lot of time on TV and things like that. But you kind of know that it's a show about stars and astronomy and astrophysics. You kind of get it. Mm-hmm. So you get the voice, and you get to be able to talk as long as you want to about a topic. You're not confined by a time limit or a commercial break or a speed, a path. You just got to get up and do what you want. And that breathes personality into whatever concept you do. To me, our business, and any business I've ever done, is a very living, breathing, growing organism that you kind of just have to let it do what it's going to do, giving it some constraints here and there, but really more like, what is this thing going to grow up to be? And you have to constantly just put things to it and making sure resources and money are flowing through to do it. This is almost like literally its personality coming out in a day-to-day fashion. If it's just through my voice or through any of our voices, like when Paige and her team come on, that's them on the front lines working with kids. That's the personality of that happening. When Alex is talking about the marketing side of this is what's happening in our day-to-day lives in order to make this organism grow and become more of a thing. And I think it gives you that organically versus any other medium, which is really pretty awesome.
All right. Alex, what do you think for a marketing aspect?
Well, I totally agree with what Aaron said about, this podcast being a window to people's personalities. I think that's another a big thing that helps listeners of podcasts be able to feel like they're almost at the table or sitting in on a discussion or, with almost friends. We want to be personal. We want to help you. I think that's kind of cool. You're not just listening to a lecture. We really don't want to come across as we're lecturing. We really, are having a conversation. And all of our podcasts, we really are just sitting at a table having a conversation with each other and with a listener. One of the other things I really love from a marketing perspective about podcasting is it to me, when you said you talked about live radio, to me, podcasting is to live radio as like Netflix or HBO Go is to live TV. So, we used to watch live TV, and if the segment aired and you missed it or you came in halfway through, well, you're out of luck. But I can subscribe. We're Netflix subscribers, so we can watch our show whenever we want to pause it, come back, whatever. And that's kind of the thing with podcasting. So, I realize that, our listeners are busy and can't always listen at the same time, or might need to re-listen to something or listen in their car, come back to it later. So podcasting really gives you that ability to, whenever you want the content, you've got it. And I really value that.
Mm-hmm. And as a guest, Paige, newcomer to the table, but at the same time, you bring it, as they both mentioned, you're the front line. Mm-hmm. Much different to the podcast.
I was thinking about how I interact with different businesses as a consumer, right? I want a relationship with my business. Like the reason I take my kids all the way over to Hilliard from Clintonville to the dentist is because she is the world's best dentist. Why? Is she better at cleaning teeth or identifying cavities or whatever? No. We love Dr. JoJo because she is awesome, right? She's super fun and she is very kind and she's developed a great relationship with my kids. And I think about the ways that you can develop relationships with your listeners who become your consumers, who become the people you do business with. And I think that that's so important because people want to know you and they want to like you. And hopefully they do both after they listen to Affording College with College Liftoff. I think it's just another way to kind of meet people where they are and really get to know them and get to know what they're looking for and for them to know us. Because again, I'm not going to go to the mean bank, right? I want to go to the bank where they're nice to us and the lollipops taste very good, right? So I think that much can be said for like any business. Like you really do yourselves a huge disservice by not thinking about what it is that your consumers want from you, and what they really want is a relationship. So
brand identity is so important nowadays. I mean, that's the marketable difference where I can remember as a kid, which is like, I mean, you had brands that you liked, but now we have brands you identify with, right? And so you go to that, which, you look for. What are they doing in the community? How do they treat their customers? How do I feel about the next experience I'm going to have there? You want to make sure you're looking forward to all these things that make it up because you identify so closely with them now than you have before. And we're doing that. We're trying to do that every day. There isn't per se a college planning brand out there. We talk about it a lot. There's no Apple or McDonald's in our space. So it's as Paige just said, yet. Right? We're always we're looking at.
You are the Apple in the space.
I would be remiss to tell you if we're not looking to claim that, right? So that's because we believe in what we do and we think we do it in a positive, upbeat, thoughtful way that makes a big difference and can have big dramatic effects for families and kids. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it.
Right.
And we want to make sure that our people, the ones that are coming to us and that work with us, feel that sense of culture and connectedness and one-on-oneness. Like your person, you're never going to be stuck in front of a computer with working with us. Like that's not how we work. We work one-on-one with you. You see people, you work with people, you interact with individuals and all the time in a positive, upbeat, thoughtful, pedagogical, intelligent way. Mm-hmm. And we want to parlay that. That's why information isn't a fear for us. That's why we would never use it as such. It's just a way for you to understand, like, this is a thing. There's a lot to it. Be armed with as much as you can, and then there's still some work to be done.
Well, thanks for the information, your insights on where you started, where you are now, where you're going to the future. I appreciate it. I think a lot of businesses can take notes from this for sure, because you're in a unique situation that you really don't have any competition per se, but you're laying it all out there, through a podcast and marketing and such too. So I think I appreciate your insights and being able to even peel back a few more layers than you even give in your own podcast, right. Looking on the other side of why you do it, and the marketing behind it too. So again, thank you for being part of the podcast. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you, Brett.
Thank you, Brett.
With over 600,000 podcasts available, your podcast needs to stand out immediately. By working with Circle 270 Media Podcast Consultants, you get the 1-year advantage. Your first episode will sound like you've been podcasting for a year. The podcast consultants at Circle 270 Media have over 35 years' experience in digital and traditional marketing, content creation, audio production, recording, and broadcasting. We strategically bring these worlds together and consult businesses who are implementing podcasting into their marketing strategy to grow their brands and businesses. Own your story. Engage and interact with your customers and clients. Grow your brand and business with your own podcast. For more information about Circle 270 Media Podcast Consultants and how we can help your business begin or better implement your current podcast into your marketing strategy, contact me at podcasts@circle270media.com.